Yeah, please start. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Sandeep. So hello, everybody. So we are meeting today for the occasion of launching a film which has been produced by the Working People's Charter, which is a network of organizations working with informal sector workers. And our membership covers essentially states from all over the country, organizations from all over the country. And a major chunk of our work is to do with migration. And the recent COVID crisis has really brought out the problems of informality, what shall I say, a whole, you can't say bunch of people, a whole mass of people who have been invisible, who have been working in this country, who have been citizens of this country, who have been invisible in this country, were suddenly visible during the time of the COVID crisis. And when they walked on the roads, going back home because they had no job, no place to stay, and no money, that was when, in fact, the country, for the first time, perhaps media and people saw people who have even worked on policy for so long and who have never realized the extent to which the people who work in the workers of this country have suffered, and the way that they have lived and worked. So the film by Isha, which is essentially started with looking at the work that WPC did during the time of the COVID lockdown, and what happened when the country suddenly went into lockdown, and there was no plan and no policy with regard to what should happen with workers. This was something that Isha started to document, but it has become much more than that. We will all see the film. It's being launched today at 10 o'clock. It has it will be seen. It can be seen on YouTube. She will tell you more about that. So, to introduce myself, I am a labor activist. I am currently working president of the Working People's Charter, and I'm also a writer, researcher, and labor historian. I will moderate this panel, and the speakers that we have here, Isha will of course speak first. She will speak about the film. We will not be showing the film, but Isha will speak about the film. And then we have Rajiv Khandelwal and Seema Chishti and Surabhi Sharma. I will I will tell you more about them, and when it comes to their speaking. Each person will get 10 minutes. I will let you know when you're going over the time limit. The, the, the first speaker, Isha, I will give you a brief introduction. Isha is a filmmaker, actor, director, writer, and trainer. She's involved with a variety of film and theatre projects. She has a master's in media and cultural studies from TIS in Mumbai and a diploma in film direction from LB Prasad Film and TV Academy in Chennai. She has made a number of short documentary films, and she is also a theatre person. She's co-founder of an English theatre group called Drama Queens in Pune. She is also working with a feature film at the moment. Over to you, Isha.
Unfortunately, okay, Isha's just back in the room. She had dropped out. She's joining back.
Oh dear. So would you like us to continue? Will Isha take time?
No, she's in the process. Just a few seconds more. She's joining in.
To introduce Sandeep Narwani, who will be assisting us with all the technical issues with this. And he will also, so all the people who are participating in this are welcome to, so in whichever format you're watching this, please get back to Sandeep. You can send us questions, which Sandeep will then pass on to the panelists so that they can respond. So participants, but unfortunately you are muted, and we request you to keep your visual also off. Yeah.
Isha, please start the video. You're on.
Video off, right?
Isha, can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah. This will be hopefully stable.
Yeah, over to you.
Yeah.
Over to you.
To me?
Yeah, you've been introduced already.
Okay. All right. So basically, what happened with the film, I'll just talk about, how I got to make it and what kind of impact that has had on me. The idea essentially was when Chandan asked me to do this, the idea was that we were going to compile all that has been documented by WPC alliance partners on ground when they were doing relief work because of the COVID lockdown. The workers, a lot of workers had thrown into this extremely vulnerable position where they didn't have work and they had were they didn't even know how to go back because everything had been shut down. And at that time, the work that WPC Alliance Partners did had been extensively documented, which was great. Um, and that was supposed to be compiled. But soon I realized that, and I think I also spoke with Chandan at that time, that it can't be just this, that it has to be more than this. It has to be something that kind of questions why workers and the working class in this nation have find themselves in such a vulnerable position, find themselves where they have nothing, nowhere to go, nothing to do, and no food, no shelter suddenly. And how have we not created systems that can manage a crisis like this, where people, I mean, the only thing that can happen is that people die, which is, it seems ridiculous. Um, so I spoke to Chandan about this, and he was very supportive, obviously, and he said that go ahead and do this. And then I got to speak to Meena about this. Unfortunately, we didn't get her bite in the film, or her. I couldn't. I mean, somehow we didn't manage to have a conversation that I could include in the film. But I had a few conversations with Meena on the phone, and that kind of really opened up this whole, several possibilities actually of how I could go about this. And yeah, I mean, that's how it started, and that's how it happened. And I mean, what can I say? I'm very grateful to the people who sent me the videos from the ground, because obviously I wasn't going to these places. Specifically, I'd like to mention who does amazing videography, and he sent me many videos that have been used in the film. But there are several others as well. And then there were a few missing pieces for which I went and did some shooting. I most of the long to do some small shoots like a labor here in Pune, or we met Ram Laude, who's a union leader uh, near Pune and Pimpri. So he had been very active in the early 80s. So we spoke to him, and we also got people like Prabhat Patnaik, who is an expert. Uh, I mean, who doesn't know Prabhat Patnaik? And we got him to kind of speak about liberal economies where the rich become richer and the become poorer, and unemployment rates increase, and so on and so forth. We had Rajiv speak to us about both the work of Ajivika, and also how, I mean, what I really resonated with in Rajiv's conversation is they not able enough how that change, how we need to, really the of equality and inequality. So yeah, that's how it happened. Is that firstly, this is an overarching kind of a film, right? It talks about a lot of things, and I realized that every issue that the film deals with requires separate audiovisual material to actually go in the depth of the issues that are being discussed. And I think it's very important work that has to be done. I'm not saying I have to do it, but I think that work has to be done. And another thing that I think is very important is that cinema is extremely powerful. And I mean, I realize this on a daily basis because I engage with cinema very seriously. And I have been engaging with cinema for maybe the last 15 years. But uh, while making this film, you know, putting ideas, issues, and the audiovisual medium together kind of creates much more impact many times than certain other mediums. I think filmmakers like me have to delve in this space. We need to take this space seriously. We need to make sure that we are creating audiovisual material that will speak to people, that will get people to think about these issues and even struggle for these issues. So yeah, that's all I have to say. I'll be happy to answer questions afterwards if people want to ask anything. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isha. Actually, you have spoken very little about the intense effort that it was to do this during COVID, and what struggle it was to get the footage that you do have, and I think that really needs to be appreciated. And despite the lockdown, I think you were able to make it to some of the places where some of the nakas and also the places where food was being distributed, and that also, I mean, added to the fact that this is very live, despite, so you can't really tell that it was really done during a lockdown. Yeah. So yeah, but we can continue to discuss that. Now we have Rajiv Khandelwal. Rajiv is the co-founder and director of Ajivika Bureau. I mean, everybody knows him, so it's not much I have to say about him. So the Ajivika Bureau works in Rajasthan, Gujarat, and Maharashtra, and they work with migrant workers, which is the most vulnerable section of the informal workers in the country. It provides legal aid, unionization support, skilling, social security, financial services, and healthcare to migrants, both in their rural source and in the urban labor markets. So the organization has made huge contributions to labor research and policy. Rajiv himself was trained in rural management and has over 3 decades of experience in rural livelihood and labor rights. He is based in Udaipur. Over to you, Rajiv.
Thank you, Meera, and thank you for the invitation to come and say a few words on the remarkable effort that Isha made during a very delicate time. So, congratulations to you, Isha, and to the amazing kind of output that we have. And in a way, I am happy that it is coming out now and not earlier, because we are living in a post-remorse kind of a scenario in which the migrant crisis is all but forgotten. The situation of workers is a thing of the past. And I think it is work such as this, such as your movie, such as this movie, which will kind of keep us reminded of what happened just recently, not that far in the past, right? And the material in it, in the movie, is really it has great contemporary value. It can be used for policy program kind of discussions today, but it also has archival and historical value. And I hope we can use this footage and this material even later when we think about how the conditions of work and workers in this country changed or not, despite what has happened, what continues to happen recently. Now, it is one thing to go over thinking about why things went so badly, okay? And I think that the film already has covered. And I think it is time to also look at very carefully at what is happening now as we speak, as this movie comes out, as all of us get back to some sense of normalcy, get back to work in some way. Of course, I know Corona is nowhere near end, but markets are opening up. The cities in which we work, especially in Gujarat and Maharashtra, in the cities of Ahmedabad, Rajkot, Baroda, Surat, Mumbai, Pune, despite the prevalence of COVID, workers have got back. They are back in thousands actually. They're back because the rural areas that they return to just do not have the capacity to hold on to them any longer. They don't have the capacity to earn their survival just being in the villages. And we see that very clearly because we are, based, Ajivika Bureau's own work is based out of South Rajasthan, which is a Adivasi, predominantly sending region of the state that sends thousands of workers to Gujarat and to Maharashtra. And we saw that given the thinness of social protection, given the small amounts that were offered to people as they came back by way of relief and succor, is just not enough. It is not enough to create a viable alternative for people back in the rural areas. So people have got back. Just where I am, people have, workers are already back in the construction sites, in factories, in hotels, restaurants of Gujarat. But the question to ask is, what are they getting back to? Have we learned anything from what they from what they left? And unfortunately, none of that is changing. And I think we need to bring urgent attention to that fact, to the staticness of the reality that workers are confronted with. In many ways, things have gotten worse. Okay, for example, because of the slow recovery of the economy, especially in the downstream kind of spaces, we see that a lot of workers are being moved from waged kind of systems to piece rated systems. Okay, so they're no longer wage workers. They are being offered work, but on as a job contract, on piece rates. And as we all well know, that this is one classical way in which labor is cheapened. It is, devalued further because, there are all kinds of issues around quality and around output, and people get paid much lower than for the same amount of work that they were doing earlier. So in Ahmedabad markets that we know very well, currently wages are down by 40%, and that's not enough for workers to be surviving there. Housing is not sorted out. People are back in open areas, living on pavements, under flyovers, or even worse, inside work sites, which is one of the most vulnerable forms of shelter for workers. It also creates a certain captivity and bondage to work if they are staying on site. Construction sites may be one thing, but if you have workers staying inside factories and near boilers, it creates altogether different kind of hazard. And the same thing is now back to being repeated. Okay. Universal access that we all spoke about so much, during the lockdown, in all the webinars that we attended, that we must open out PDS, healthcare, nutrition for workers who are coming back. It still remains highly restricted and exclusionary. One of the campaigns that we have just begun in Gujarat is to demand ration for all workers, migrant workers especially, who for the next 6 months. Okay, leave alone the long-term idea of providing ration to everyone, but at least for the next 6 months, make it possible for workers to return to work by giving them subsidized food. And none of that is going to happen because the procedures and barriers to universal access to PDS and other services remain as severe and as difficult to navigate for workers as they're coming back. The overriding issue is the informalization of our workforce, that workers continue to be informal. There is no formal documentation. There is no formal evidence of their relationship with their employers. There is still, despite all the registration kind of, sound bites that we hear, actually very little is happening except for creating pools of skilled labor that the industry can then use, which is a very perverted form of registration. I think we need to address those core issues very squarely that the film has pointed out in such a stark way. We need to address the informal identity of workers. We need to urgently address issues of housing, PDS, healthcare in cities, and absolutely we need to look at the whole issues of wages and work conditions that the workers are facing with, are confronted with. They already existed. The pandemic did not create these issues. They were already present in our economy. The morality of our economy thrives on these kinds of issues, on these kinds of realities for workers, and I think these need to be reversed very rapidly. So I would just want to offer, the hope for a proposal for urgent action in future that the film is trying to, highlight, bring to our attention again. Isha, thank you very much for creating such an amazing archive of footage and of visuals and interviews. This should go into textbooks or online teaching material as things have changed, currently. And I hope we get to use it and use it politically and creatively going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rajiv. Thank you for kind of for focusing on the main areas that we will have to focus on now. And I think the positive thing is that the coming together of organizations working with informal sector workers without any kind of sectarian issues, no kind of political differences, no kind of space issues or anything. People are coming together and looking at these issues, whether it is wages or social security and housing, etc. So we are working together, and that is itself, I think, a very positive thing. But it's a very, very long battle, as we all know. It's almost like all the things that workers fought for 100 years ago, we're going back to fighting for the same things again. It's almost like it's all come back full circle, and we have to fight all over again for the very same things. And we've reached, the situation that workers were in even before they got unionized very early on in the century. Well, so now I will call upon Seema Chishti, who is a senior journalist. She's been a journalist, a multimedia journalist since 1990. She has worked in print, radio, and television in English as well as in Hindi. She was editor Delhi with BBC India from 96 to 2006. And prior to this, she worked with BBC World Service in London and in the television format as well. She broke news stories on the anti-corruption movement, on the Indian judicial system, electoral politics, and on technology and politics, including state surveillance of citizens. She recently co-authored the book Note by Note, The India Story, which is a history of independent India from 47 to 2017. So we look forward to hearing what Seema has to say. Over to you, Seema.
Thank you, Amina. Many thanks, Rajiv and Isha, of course, for it's a tough act to follow. And particularly Isha, many thanks. And while watching your film yesterday, I was struck by how important it is. And of course, being a journalist for like donkey's years, the essential thing of resistance is essentially to document what we see, and what little of that happens in the mainstream media, as we know now, makes your job even more stand out, really. I think it's a very sophisticated film in the way that you've managed to go out in the lockdown, get all those images, put a context to it, get people to comment on it, and to really do the zoom out in terms of issues that it's not just a lament, it's a call for action. It's a call which recognizes the challenges as we handle one of our biggest issues, dealing with some of our most vulnerable kind of fellow citizens. So it's truly to be commended for that. I particularly like the fact that you have not hesitated to make it about identity issues as well, and bringing in all the challenges that any kind of workers movement or a movement that tries to kind of base itself on material, real issues and their status faces, and you've dealt with that very squarely. So it was really good to watch that documentation. And I'd like to just very briefly reflect on some wonderful phrases that Rajiv used, and especially that phrase post-remorse. And I wish I could agree that it was post-remorse. It's a great phrase. And I wish that Indian society had actually exhibited some remorse, because I was really struck by the absence of a genuine outrage, because the whole world saw lockdowns, they saw the pandemic, but nowhere in the world did you see heartbreaking sights like people who have actually built these cities, who've built modern India, the conception of urban India, actually walking back home. So they didn't really think that this was home. And this is not only about, there's been a lot of sociological analysis about going back to the village and all, but these were people who felt that there was nothing that this place had to offer once their livelihoods had stopped, their piecemeal contracting had stopped, and they were just not in a position to kind of hold out and live here. It's not as if they were kind of organically necessarily linked. That is not only the reason why they left. They left because this was unwelcoming for them. So that to me really struck me until millions, thousands gathered at bus stops and walking back, until you had really heartrending stories. You didn't even see that kind of focus on them. And you have more than 10 million of them, as the government admitted in parliament, having walked back home, being the case. So for me, the lack of remorse really, really stood out. So I think as is very well known to everybody here, is that the fact that it took the pandemic to take the blanket off the true reality of the Indian economy. And the fact that India, boasts of being one of G20, it talks about, holding its own in the Committee of Nations, of being this great superpower emerging market. The entire economic success of India, what it touts as or used to tout as its economic success, is actually based on this Dehadi model, on the fact that you're able to kind of keep a very large section subservient to industry, to industrial demands of contracting, without giving any kind of support or social, I won't even call it a thin social security system. I think it's practically absent. So there's all this talk of creches, etc., and all of that, but one has to just ride out into any construction area, and a lot of things have started now. People are trying to get back to the old normal, as it were, and you realize how little there is to support working lives, and which, as we know, constitutes more than 9/10 of the working force, which is denied the benefits of any kind of formalization. So I think it took a COVID or a worldwide pandemic to kind of allow everything to bubble up to the surface, like almost bodies bubble up in water bodies, really, jaise laash uthti hai, when it comes to that. So it's been as ugly and as distressing as that. But so be it. I think it's really good to have, we cannot turn our back towards organizations, especially to NGOs, civil society organizations, people, charity that helped and fed these people and, tried to at least shame the government. They didn't always succeed, but at least they tried to shame the government into action, and they did all that. But again, what really comes to your mind is how the state's role in allowing all this to kind of go on is just so colossal. And the job is so big that no government can wash its hands off this. And this is classic Indian society at work, that we let charity and we let civil society do its job. But it's actually the whole scale of the problem and the crisis that confronts India and the economy today, with no signs of any kind of revival or any bid to also put cash in the hands of people, to give them free food, no meaningful thing being done there, as to how colossal the task is. And it'll need the reassertion of Indians, of all of us, to kind of tell the government that it's their job to do it, and that it is demanded as a right. One thing that we've seen, and I'm going away from just the remit of migrants or informal workers, but it informs the whole debate, is the whole sense in which the whole phrase rights is now being pushed away. It's being, so if the government does something, it's a kind of a benevolence, or it's some kind of empowered, I think is the biggest word that the government is probably willing to accept in terms of articulating demands. But the fact that it's the right of people to to secure this. That whole rights question is really now has been thrown out with the bathwater and is frowned upon. And to me, that is the most dangerous thing as we go ahead in a time and place where inequality has already been there. It's been rampant. There is massive social inequality that has social sanction. But along with that, the massive layers of economic inequality. And the stats are startling on that. And it just keeps getting worse. And we know that over the past few years, it has been getting worse. So for me, that is the most kind of a worrying thing, that the entire language of rights, or the conversation that happened about the right to life being kind of expanded to actually make each Indian feel included and part of the India project. That not happening now, or that being actually discouraged, and benevolence kind of replacing the articulation of people as demanding their rights. For me, that's worrying. And the other thing that's worrying is the fact that the government can wash its hands off this, that it can just ignore that this ever happened and move on to another day, So for me, that's most worrying. And those are the two things we will need to kind of keep harping on, whether as documenters, whether as activists, whether as people who kind of want to push government to do things. So I think those are the biggest challenges. And the plight of the informal workers, the plight of people going back home to a home which is different from the magnificent places that they've built, on which the whole urbanization story rests, on which economic progress, whatever that may mean, rests, at the fact that they still see themselves and they're willfully excluded from the fruits of that, for me, is the most disturbing thing. And I hope that your film and endeavors like Ajivika Bureau and others like that will go some way in almost jhagjodoing the kind of conscience of the Indian people, as it were, and insist that we have some remorse, and so where we can kind of at least deal with this, which the visuals that brought this to life so dramatically and spectacularly. Meena.
My video wasn't coming on. Thank you very much, Seema. I'm glad you spoke about the way that we have to put pressure on the government, and how this cannot be done actually only by workers' organizations. Today, as you know, the trade union movement, the way that it has been completely, pushed back, and not just because of the attack on the trade unions themselves, but the attack on the working class itself. I mean, the fact that the workers themselves are not able to organize with the whole informality, like a cancer that makes workers feel almost helpless in the face of the kind of the lives that they lead, and the way that they have to work, the wages for which they have to work, and the absence of organization, and the active hostility towards any kind of organization at the workplace. So in this, it's really important to have a lot of other sections of people supporting the struggle, whether it is academics, whether it's journalists and lawyers and others. And I must say, there has been a move towards that. There has been, you were saying that there isn't remorse. That's absolutely correct. I mean, there's no remorse on the part of the policymakers for sure. But in media and amongst academics and students and others, there was a kind of a feeling that, yes, something needs to be done about that. And I think that's something we could build on and reach people so that we can say, okay, this is what we can fight and make a change. Because otherwise it just looks so big that it's almost impossible to decide what we can do about it. So yes, and that's a very important suggestion that you made. I will now, there are a couple of questions and I wanted to ask Rajiv whether he is in a position to take any questions. Rajiv? I don't know whether he is, because I think that he was mobile. But anyway, but we'll move on. I just wanted to say to the people who have asked the questions that there are a number of studies already on the situation with informal workers. Yes, there are. I mean, it's pretty. There is one study which ActionAid has done. There is another study which, I mean, you can, if you are able to send your email to us, we will send you, in fact, the links to all those studies. I can't immediately tell you which are the studies. We ourselves as WPC, Working People's Charter, did one study on after the long marches, what do workers want, and which was a study of just 100 people. We looked at when, after they went back, what is it that they were looking at there? Were there any opportunities? Were there any way that they could settle when they went back? And now we are doing a study on, we are going back to the same people and approaching more people to see those who have come back, what the lack of opportunities which made them come back, and if there are people who have settled there, what they are doing there. So there are many, many small and big studies. We can send you information on that. Now, before I go to the, yes, and there was one more question about cases. Yes, there are. I can't say there are a number of cases in the courts, including, yes, Supreme Court as well. There are efforts which we can tell you about. I can't. This may not be the place to talk in detail about those, but we can get back to you. So thank you, Seema. And now we go on to Surabhi Sharma. Surabhi is teaching in Abu Dhabi now. She's a professor, and she has been an independent filmmaker making feature-length documentaries and short films since 2000. Her documentaries, fiction and video installations engage with cities and transition using the lens of labor, music, and migration. Okay. Surabhi's films have been screened and awarded at international film festivals and are included in teaching curricula in universities in North America and in India. She's visiting faculty at NID Ahmedabad, in Whistling Woods, Mumbai, and many other institutions. She has awarded the Motion Picture Association Asia Pacific Screen Awards Academy Film Fund, and for her ongoing documentary film project, Music in a Village Named 1PB. Her films have been recognized and awarded at many festivals, including the 8th Asia Pacific Screen Awards, Brisbane 2016, and Eco Cinema Greece 2003. Over to you, Surabhi.
Thank you, Meena. And thank you for including me in this panel. Thank you, Isha, for making this film. I think the first thing I would like to say to Isha actually is, in the current climate of mainstream media almost entirely wanting to tell stories for the immediate drama that it provides, in the face of that media culture, mediascape, when someone like you tries to make the story a broader based understanding and analysis, it's the most urgently required thing that we need at the moment. So thank you, really thank you for that. You know, I think for me, the overwhelming sense in the past few months of watching this absolutely horrible, traumatic story unfold as workers in thousands walked home, was the sense how, yes, for a brief moment, as everybody said, as Meena said really beautifully, that labor that has been invisible, and that is a majority chunk of labor in urban India, has been very systematically kept invisible. Suddenly they were visible. Their presence was bubbling over. What struck me as incredible was that mainstream media was very charged with those images and the story of people walking and the trauma with which they were walking back. But not a single person asked the question, what are they walking back to? What is home? Where is this home? So in your film, Isha, when you actually ask that question and get it to the topic of Manrega and what it is doing for women in the villages, and when you have all the men come back, what does that mean? And how unsustainable, you know, all the policies that we have vis-a-vis rural development, they work with the idea of villages that are half empty, where the men are all in the city. The imagination that people would go back home is not embedded in policy making at all. So when you actually ask the question, what are people going back home to? What is home? And how unsustainable that is, and how within the first few months, the first chance possible, people will be back into the cities, as Rajiv spoke eloquently about that. You know, what are we talking about? The pandemic has opened up cracks, has opened us cracks to see the grave issues that have existed. These are not new. As everybody in this panel have repeated, it's not the pandemic that caused the issues were already there. It's the pandemic that just ripped open all the ways in which we had managed to keep it outside our sight, right? And suddenly we are confronted with all the issues. And how do you locate these issues? And again, Isha, one of the things that you sort of begin with is a fabulous interview with a veteran trade union activist in Pune. And you try and locate this story of this kind of massive informalization of labor, even in industries that earlier were not informal, dependent on informal labor. How did, and again, Meena is really possibly the most important person to speak of this. And for me personally, when I made my film 20 years ago on informalization of labor in Bombay, Meena's work was really important and to inform my understanding. Now, when you locate this story of today's crisis in the story of the dismantling of trade unions over, again, systematically, not by individual factory owners, but through policy, and through the 90s, we've seen that happen. It's an important anchor to the story of understanding what the pandemic did to these million workers walking home, rushing home. When you bring up the very important understanding of women and how large that constituent is in informal labor. Nobody was asking that question of what about the women in the informal sector? How are they impacted? What are these industries all about? We all had stories about our building, the building in the neighborhood where women were not being paid by their employers. Women were talking about employers not picking up their phone. The gated communities became completely gated in the true sense of the word. Suddenly all the women and the drivers and everybody who worked in these fancy gated buildings did not have access even to ask for their wages of the past few months. So again, when you focus your lens on women, and I particularly remember the interview with the domestic worker in Pune, who speaks about what that means for her in actual day-to-day terms, and the absolute the precarity of that situation that Kiran Moge speaks about. I also want to, again, as Seema brought up a quote of Rajiv, I actually made a note of a term that Rajiv used. I'm sort of paraphrasing what he said, but he spoke about immoral policies and immoral economy. And really that really made me think, really gave me the term for the day, actually, to talk about how this film actually makes you think about how the entire system is almost like it's not even amoral, it's immoral. It is turning its back. It has taken away every safety net. Actually, I don't know if we can say it's taken away. It wasn't existent. There was no PDS that was functional. There was no healthcare system that was functional. There was no permanence of labor or dignity of labor that existed. The one thing that we had was the transport system, and that was locked down as well. And suddenly you have a situation where within the day, people have no means to survive. There is no housing to speak about. So in that context, Isha, again, I really just want to thank you for trying to locate these debates in broader questions. It's just so critical to go past that flashy and shiny headline, which is all that we are doing, if at all, if it makes it to the headlines. This time there was no getting away from it. If it was not at such a mass scale, I don't think it would have made it to the headlines either. So really, I think the importance of a film like this, of documenting this work, of locating the fact that piecemeal relief work by NGOs has to be countered with the so-called work that government relief does. And again, you showed us very evocatively how completely pitiable and pathetic that was, you know, the relief that the government was providing. So to again not make it about the goodness and the commitment of people and NGOs, you know, of civil society, rather it has to be contrasted with the complete absence of work done by either state or central governments. So for every point you sort of really locate it in a debate, in a context. So thank you for that, and really thank you for the Working People's Charter for making this film possible and supporting Isha in this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Surabhi. Yes, I think that Isha has done a lot to bring out a period which people are likely to forget. And we hope that this film will actually bring back those days in such a way as to also contextualize the policies that would be needed, to contextualize it in such a way that the policies which we will have to fight for, we will be able to focus on. I just wanted to ask Isha whether she would like to say something before we end, because unfortunately Rajiv is no longer there. He is on the road, and I won't be able to ask him to take questions about the cases, but he just wrote to say, yes, of course, they themselves have 65 cases in court, and all organizations working with informal sector workers have at least that many cases everywhere. So I don't know whether, you see, the problem is when you don't have a legal framework in which you can ask for rights, going to court does not really guarantee you any kind of success. So the problem is that the laws, and now in fact with the labor codes, the way that the government has kind of arranged and designed the labor codes in such a way that even to fight for those rights have become really difficult, and what to fight for has become an issue. Because if you have to go to court, you have to go within a legal framework. And well, so today our fight is not only in the legal framework, it has to be broader than that. It has to be for very basic rights of organization, basic rights to a decent wage, basic rights to health, and to bring back some of the things like the ESI and things like that. That's the fight. Now we are looking at how can informal workers be covered by ESI? How is it that we can get a basic framework there in place for informal workers? Well, now I would like to ask whether the filmmaker should actually end with some words from herself. So, Isha?
I mean, it's very, it's amazing to listen to all of you who understand so deeply the socio-economic, political situation that our nation is vis-a-vis the working people and the working classes. And I mean, as a filmmaker, I can say something as a filmmaker, and I think that's what I should speak about, is that there are very creative and impactful ways of making films. And there are these kinds of, so what I have noticed, and I think some people have been speaking about this, is that both the fiction film industry, which is the Bollywood industry, or other places, have stopped talking about the working classes. And documentary makers often seem to focus more on identity issues. And I think some filmmakers like me, if we need to learn to make more creative, interesting, impactful, create this kind of material that can hopefully reach more people. I mean, because it's very layered, the situation that we are in. And as Surabhi said, that there has never been a safety net for people, right? And that that goes into various spaces. Like it's about education, it's about health, it's about employment, it's about all kinds of things. It's about housing. And if people like me can't do it, I don't know who can. I mean, we have to. We have to get better at it. We have to have better skills. We have to learn to do it with smaller budgets, and you know, create more material and be honest. Be able to go deeper in the issues that we are investigating. So yeah, and I hope more people take it up. So that's all I have to say.
Well, congratulations again, Isha. So there's just one more comment that has come. I'd just like to read it out. A question comment. The notion of a central government is that it must that it provisions rights. The notion of a job guarantee should provide a baseline for workers. What has prevented this from happening in this context? Well, the minimum wages, which is supposed to be guaranteed. I mean, there have been years of struggle on this, and there are minimum wages boards in every state. And today we have like millions of people working below the minimum wage. We call it slavery. It's modern slavery, because if you paid below the minimum wage, like bonded labor, they are bonded labor. So they have no place in a modern economy. And this is what is happening in India. So if we are saying that a central government hasn't provided that, why? Because the entire economic system has changed, and the film, in fact, deals with that. So maybe you should really see the film, because that has been dealt with by many of the people who are speaking there. And yes, so I would like to thank all the speakers. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you, Sandeep, for the technical assistance that you provided. And thanks, of course, to Isha for this wonderful film that she's made. And we do hope to show it everywhere. Working People's Charter is extremely proud that you've done this film for us. And we will show it in different parts. I don't know about language and things, but we hope that we will be able to get people to explain what is in the film. I don't know how we are going to manage the language issue, actually. That's something that we will have to sort out. So I just wanted to say, I hope this will not be just a discussion. As I said, we have been in the Working People's Charter trying to get various kinds of people. We are working with academics, we are working with people in media, we are working with different people in different sectors, you can say, and with central trade unions, because we believe that it's very important for everyone to come together. And the old way of looking at, because there was in the beginning when we started working with informal sector workers and bringing them together, there was a feeling that formal sector workers are somehow they are privileged, and there's no point in working with them because they're privileged, and that's completely foolish thing to think now, because I mean, I worked with textile workers for so long, and that was one of the first sections to completely get informalized, in the sense that once the company is closed, they had to either work in power loom, they work as security guards, they work in people's homes, and a total breakdown of the entire formal sector is in fact in place. I mean, there's a process in place. So it's a very it's a totally imaginary wall that we create between formal and informal. Now, labor in India is now informal to a large extent. So how we deal with that, how we come together, how we design demands also in such a way as to move away from only speaking about the sectors which are still organized, for instance, telecommunication or defense or railways or this, which is important, and banks, insurance, that the solidarity between these sections is something that we really need to build on. So solidarity, I'd like to end on that note, that solidarity is the most important thing today. We have a huge systemic problem with a government which is not at all amenable. It's opaque. That's the word I would use. It is an opaque government for us. We don't have much access to even talk about the issues, but we will have to. There is no alternative. We have to fight this. We have to come together. We have to be heard, and we have to make change. So, so this film is one small step in that direction. Thank you, and thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.